Hey folks, welcome back to AndyKennedyCO and our podcast and vlog on YouTube. I'm with my amazing office magician, Mary, today. And Mary and I recorded the first half of this interview in our segment 1. So if you're tuning into this, make sure to go back and listen to that first half because we're jumping into the middle here with the interview. And this will now be Mary's second podcast on her Not So Good at Small Talk.
Technically, yes.
Yes, podcast as well. So follow us on both places at AndyKennedyCO and Mary's Not So Good at Small Talk. So let's dive back into this interview that we just cut off because we're running long on it.
Yes, thank you, Andy. Actually, I did say 5 points in the last episode, but I think we just have to go over 3.
Right.
We stopped at the Celestine Prophecy, but if you do want to expand on that, please do. And then after that, I just wanted to ask about like the other European countries that you visited, and then going back to, the United States and what was it like readjusting to the culture there. So
Awesome. Okay, so at the time that I was reading the Celestine Prophecy in 1997, because I was in Scotland for all of 1997, I also had the 10th Insight with me. So I had both books. I purchased the 10th Insight in Scotland, and I didn't know there was an 11th Insight, and I think it came out like that year. So as Synchronicity would have it, I didn't read that. But I did read the 10th. So I read all 9 and then the 10th Insight in Scotland, and had some really amazing, deep conversations with people who, I had become friends with, very close with, and a lot of them had never had any exposure to any of this, Wayne Dyer, Louise Hay. I think the Celestine Prophecy was released by Hay House the first time, maybe not, maybe they just promote it. But, I was talking in the last episode about technology and how we didn't have the internet. We didn't have, a way to see like how many books are in this series. Like you had to go to the bookstore and talk to the librarian, right? Like to talk about these topics with those folks. And I do feel like, we all connect to each other for a reason. And am I cutting out? My internet just said unstable.
for like 3 seconds, but it's
Okay,
fine
good.
now.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. I was hoping that it didn't do this to us, because it did it all day yesterday. So the blessing and the curse of technology, right? We expect it to work, and when it doesn't, we're like, what the heck? So anyway, the Celestine Prophecy has been with me now for that long, for 25 years. And anybody that I come into contact with, I feel like I have been teaching it all along. My husband, this was something that he read. Most of my friends did read it back then, because I'll say like, did you read it? Oh yeah, I read it like years and years and years ago, like 10 or 20, whatever years ago. But yeah, a lot of people really remember it being very influential for them. Remember thinking, oh, the person sitting next to me on the plane is someone I'm probably supposed to talk to because they have a message for me, right? Like all of those little things. So I think we had the 100th monkey effect, right? Where you could be in, Scotland, or you could be in Oregon, and you could read the Celestine Prophecy. And it was like slowly but surely a ripple across the world of us having this awareness of synchronicity and energy and plant energy and control dramas sort of all at once, right? But I know a lot of people say the same thing that they said about The Secret when The Secret came out, was, what do I do with this now? Right? And I was living it. I was, there was also a book called The Celestine Vision that was like how to live it and why are these insights, and it's a nonfiction version of it. So sort of teaching you. And then he came out with a teacher's manual, which I didn't know until I started teaching the class. Actually, one of my students came to me and said, there's a teacher's manual. And I had already created my own manual. And I was like, oh my gosh, talk about reinventing the wheel.
You're ahead of the game.
Yeah, maybe. Anyway, does that answer your question?
Yes, yes, it does. The roots to this, you've been living in synchronicity for, I guess, like all your life. It's just that you've been developing it and maturing it through your life processes and your decisions. And it's just amazing. Like rehashing your story in my mind, how childhood plays a really big role in who you become as a young adult to an adult. And it's again like the 100th monkey effect or the butterfly effect. You know, it's a ripple from how you were as a child, ripples to how you are as a teenager, to how you are as a young adult. So it's fascinating because you think that there's no connection to certain things, but I feel like literally everything from the smallest degree are connected.
Yeah. Yeah, no, everything from the smallest degree, I agree, is definitely connected. And I feel like I do truly believe that everything happens for a reason at your divine timing. So when
Mhm.
it comes to, all of the people that I impacted, none of these people, and I'm not taking credit for this because it's just the butterfly effect, but none of those people left Scotland, had ever left Scotland. And then, here I am, I come in, I followed, it's not even me, like I followed Goldie and Jason there. So, those two, random pop into their world, and then I show up random, pop into their world, or nothing's random. So I pop into their world as well. Um, and they all have left the country. Colin went off to join the Royal Air Force. And he was kind of a rebel, so that was an interesting decision. Charlie came to visit me in Colorado, twice. And Debbie did an around the world trip with a 6-month stint in Australia as a nurse, and then eventually moved to Australia. So, it's like that permission to be free, right? I feel like that was what I brought to this little pocket of friends in Glasgow.
That's amazing. You set them free unintentionally. You were just there to share your insights, and that's what happened. Living in synchronicity, I feel like some people, when they hear synchronicity and manifesting, and there are no such thing as coincidences, and that even coincidences are synchronous in nature. I feel like some people would fear that, or would be scared of the idea, like, oh, everything is, I'm living in synchronicity. Do you feel more free in that sense, that everything is connected and your choices now will affect what happens in the future? Because I feel like if some people hear that, it would scare them.
It does. It's a fine line between what's my destiny? Is everything fated or predetermined? And the way I've been taught is that no, there's a loose path that you can take, and there's lessons that you have chosen to have. But that's why that's why that book is called The Only Planet of Choice. We have the free will that really, what I've been told is exists nowhere else in the universe. So Earth is a very unique place, and it's why a lot of souls and spirits want to come here, is to have that experience of free will and choice, right? Which can lead you down a dark road of addiction or depression, or whatever happens in that dark road, because
Mhm.
it's choice, right? Like every day you have a choice to make, to be the light, to live in synchronicity. And I think the 10th insight gave me a little bit more of that awareness that I have to choose the good. I have to choose the path of good over and over again to stay on the path of good, right? It's not just divine. Like, I don't believe in luck. I believe in manifestation. And
Mhm.
that can be scary for people, especially people with very devout religious backgrounds, because you're taught, you have to give it all over to God, and it's God's will, which differentiates people right there. That doesn't feel free to me. And you know yet some people, I mean, they revel in that. It feels very supportive to them. They can turn it over to God and it's God's will, right? And so it's just perspective. It's just perspective. And that's why I love the 12th insight, because the 12th insight really looks deeply at all the religions and makes sure that we take the best of each religion to come into this era that we're coming into, where hopefully religion is less of a dogma and more of a spiritual choice, right? More of a, we're all in this together, you know, it's a language, it's, you know, the Tower of Babel, like, let's all come together, and doesn't have to speak, we don't have to speak the same language or live the same religion, but we all can live without judgment and choose the path of good every time. And it doesn't matter, you know, who you call God or source or where you get your energy
I love
from.
that.
It all comes
Yeah.
from the same place. It all comes from the love, sent from heart center. And that's how we're all connected, is through our heart centers. And we separate from source when we drop into this dimension, and that teaches us separation. And our job is to get back to source, to unify, to come back, you know, to congeal back into the light. So very interesting phenomenon and very interesting concept. Like, I could talk about that for another 20 minutes of, you know, how it can be very scary. And it's a fine line of like, is this fate? Is synchronicity guiding me towards this line of fate that I don't have a choice of? No, I don't believe that. I believe that you have a choice at every turn.
You have free will.
You have, this is the planet of free will. Yeah.
That is so incredibly freeing to hear you talk about that, because I imbibe in that frequency as well. And I come from a very religious background, because like here in the Philippines, there's a lot of Roman Catholics, and you know how the Catholic Church is very structured. And I know that for a lot of people, it works for them. I mean, you know, you do you, it works for you because there's structure and you have a community. And I think it's a beautiful thing, but it doesn't work for everybody.
Right.
Like, it doesn't work for me. And like, manifesting in synchronicity and living in a synchronistic manner works for me. And I'm not saying that it works for everybody, because I'm sure that let's say Catholic or someone of a different religion, or maybe even an atheist, would say that living in a synchronistic way is not for me. So I just think that this is the shoe that fits, and this is how I see my lifestyle going. And it just, I like feeling free, but I also like my structure. So I think like you telling us that piece is like such a sigh, like to know that someone also feels that way.
Yeah, it's usually the people who say I've always been the black sheep, right, that come to find me, of like, I feel like I'm the odd man out. Because, you know, even some of my friends who are still very devout, or you know, very structured in their religious beliefs, can still bring this in their way, right? So it's not either or. And that has taught me a lot, because I was very I think judgmental about the stricter religions, of like, it doesn't have to be so strict and regimented, and this is how we pray, right? Like, that's, for me, that's how Lutheranism felt. You know, this was, I heard a whole sermon on this is how we pray, and it's like, I don't pray that way. Right? So now I'm all of a sudden wrong and I'm not getting into heaven, like, screw you, right? But that for me, it's like that, like you said, that works for some people, and it gives them security, it gives them community, it gives them purpose, it gives them fulfillment. And I do think it's important to teach people to behave better. And I do value that about religion, that for the most part, it teaches people to behave better, right?
Yes, I
Because
agree
God
with
is
you on
always
that.
watching, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. And it sets an order in the world.
right.
It's a beautiful thing. But of course, when, you know, things go south, as most things do, or most things can, then that's when the bad comes in. As with anything that's good, there's always a darker side to everything. So That's
Yeah.
another interesting thing that I would love to talk about.
Yeah,
But
no, I would love to spend a whole segment on religion at some point too, because unpacking that in the 12th insight, I think, helped me understand, you know, I was raised, my father wasn't really raised with a lot of religion, although his father's side were all Lutheran ministers, and his mother's side were Italians, but they were not Catholics. And my mother's family was more Methodist, Protestant. So mother Methodist, father Protestant, right? So a lot of religion that nobody really followed. Everybody was kind of like, meh, I'm gonna leave that at the door. I think my dad doesn't call himself an atheist per se, but he believes that we turn to dust. So he's a scientist, you know, he's an economist. So he's not really into the religion piece, although they think the older he gets, the more he thinks about what's going to happen, right?
ooh,
Yeah. So, but I
fascinating.
went to first grade one day told my teacher that I was Jewish, and I got called out for randomizing my religion. And got in a little bit of trouble for it, you know, and got called out for sure. But yeah, I have always been experimental with religion, and you know, if I lean towards any religion now, it's sort of Zen Buddhism, but I also value a lot of the teachings of all of the religions, and that's what the 12th insight has taught me. Like I even appreciate things about the Muslim religion, and I appreciate things about Hinduism. I yeah, I definitely could convert to Hinduism. I love the colors and the god and all of the different
It's
gods,
such a
and
vibrant religion.
yeah,
It is.
yeah.
So, um, that movement was already taking place in the United States. And, you know, herbalism and the New Age, that movement was taking place in your country. But being exposed to a new continent, say Scotland and the other European countries that you visited, would you be able to also confirm that you saw traces of that movement there too? Or was it
Yes.
untouched?
No, in pockets of Glasgow, I found a Buddhist center and I studied there. I practiced yoga at the Buddhist center multiple times a week. I was such a regular there that I really felt like I was part of their sangha, their community, and I learned really some core foundations of meditation there. So that definitely continued to further that along for me and that relationship with Buddhism that I have. And then I also found an apothecary, and I was buying herbs at this apothecary very regularly. So I met the herbalist there and talked to her, and continued my study of herbalism there, and finding local plants. I would go up into the countryside and hunt for herbs and plants, and connect with nature and the plants of Scotland. Um, and yeah, I was thinking about a couple of the other things, but they've jumped out of my brain. I also continued my passion for writing, and signed up for an online, which is crazy because there wasn't anything online, but it was called correspondence learning back then, where they would mail you a packet and you would do your coursework and then mail it back. It's like the first online sort of. And I found this is called it was from the Morris College of Journalism in Sussex, England. And I found it through a newspaper ad. You know, do you want to be a writer? Like, take our course. So I paid for this course and took it, part of it, half of it while the last 3 months while I was in Scotland, and half of it it was a 6-month course. I took the last 3 months of it when I was in, I went back home. So yeah.
And so you went back to the United States after a year of being abroad. And you also mentioned a couple of points back that going back to your home country, you experienced culture shock.
Yeah, I did. I spent all of July in 97 when I was in Scotland in Spain, traveling, hitchhiking the southern coast of Spain with my girlfriend, who was my roommate in Oregon. She came over to visit, and I had saved up a bunch of money again, and I went down to Spain, and I actually went to Amsterdam first. We spent a week in Amsterdam and then 2 weeks in Spain. And and I spent all of my money and I was going to go home. And I was like, crap. I mean, I had said goodbye to everybody in Glasgow. I wasn't going back to Glasgow. And I had spent all but like $80. Didn't have a ticket home. And what could I get with $80? I spent $60 on a flight back to Glasgow. And, you know, I was missing Charlie and missing my friends. And so I was like, screw it, I'm going back to Scotland, which was my home at the time. So, and then I had to work a different job. I couldn't work at the pub anymore. So that's a whole nother story of breaking the rules, which I'm good at.
Odd jobs.
Yeah, well, more like not under the table, like, yeah, using somebody else's national insurance number, which is probably federal offense. So anyway, I I just laugh at myself, like, yeah, I made it out of Scotland like 2 weeks before they came looking for me. So again, synchronicity and allowing source to guide me and keep me safe, which I really believe my angels do. So I get home and Scottish people are quiet. They're reserved. English people in general, you know, are quiet and reserved. And I mean, Scottish people can get rowdy and they can be loud for sure. But I was used to, like, in conversation, I had shifted the way I speak because they couldn't understand me either. So I had picked up an accent. So I got home. I had lived a different life. And yeah, I didn't want to live there anymore. I didn't like the weather. I didn't like the confinement of an island. I didn't like the lack of fresh food, you know, greens and gardening. And I didn't want to live in a dirty city anymore. Glasgow was pretty dirty and roughneck. So I left, but I missed the version of me that was the identity that I had there. And I think that's a piece of what happens to you with culture shock. All of a sudden you have to be something you're not anymore.
A slightly different version of yourself.
Right. Yeah.
Not by choice.
Right. And so I was this awakened version of myself. I was thinner, I was healthier, but I was different. You know, I was practicing, you know, yoga and so I spent a few weeks in DC with my parents, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't be here. I can't be with you guys anymore. I need to go down to Florida. So I went down to Florida for about 6 weeks to college and lived in a orange VW microbus that was named Tangerine, that a friend loaned to me and let me live. It wasn't running. So he was like, you can live in my van. So I lived in his van for those 6 weeks on campus. And, you know, illegally, like you're not supposed to let anyone do that. So, but you know, this is where I went to college. It was 97, now 98, actually, you know, because I got home December 13th, 97. So this was February and March of 1998. And I had graduated in the spring of 1995. So some of the people that were freshmen and sophomores when I was there were still there. And that's who I connected with, several very close old friends that I reconnected with, I should say, and spent time with, and continued to teach the practices of the Celestine Prophecy, continued to teach what I had learned at the Buddhist center, and just kind of have fun and get my rocks off and not be serious and not make any money. Like, I didn't have a job. I just sort of freeloaded. You know, they would sneak me into the cafeteria and feed me. And then I convinced 5 of them to drive me to Colorado and drop me off. And I think my parents gave me a little money to help me with that, because I definitely wasn't working. Although I had saved money. That's right. I had saved a bunch of money those last 6 months in Scotland. And that's what I was living off of down there. And that's what I moved to Colorado with.
That's crazy, Andy. You have a lot of wild pocket stories. You just like remember a crazy fact and you're like, oh yeah, by the way, I lived in a van on campus in Florida for 6 weeks. I'm like, oh, okay. That's crazy. And
yeah,
like throughout all of these adventures from point A to flying all the way to a different continent, to an island, to back, short on cash, but you survived. You made it. You floated by. You were happy and you made friends. And, you know, you have like these serial planners, but then you have these awesome people like you who
Serial
just
planners.
serial planners like me,
I was gonna
you
say, is
know,
that you? Are you defining yourself right now as a
full on
serial planner?
itineraries and
Yeah.
making sure where I'm going to be for the next couple of weeks. But you didn't have that. And look at where you are now, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I trust the magic of synchronicity, and I'm trained after 25 years of using that. I have a great example that just happened this morning. So tomorrow I'm going to London. And
Exciting.
I'm a little bit of a serial planner as well now. Like I was a travel agent for a long period of time. So I like to have my travel kind of regimented, or at least pre-planned and things printed. And I don't like to be like, at the airport, I'm supposed to have this and I don't, right? So, you know, double and triple check the passport and all of that, right? So I printed everything out. So I don't have to print out my plane ticket, of course, because I'll have my phone while I'm here. So I'll check in on the app, but then when I get there, I won't have service. I'll have Wi-Fi, but you don't always get Wi-Fi wherever you go, right? So I won't have service. I'll have to either get a SIM card right away or just wing it. I'm thinking I might wing it. I usually get a SIM card, but so I got the train ticket from the Heathrow Airport to Paddington Station, where our hotel is. I booked the hotel obviously already. So we have a hotel. My friend is meeting me there and we have a hotel. And then I booked the train ticket back to Heathrow, where I'm flying down to France. So I'm flying from London to France, 4 nights in London and 4 or 5 nights, I think 4 nights anyway, in France. And this morning, EasyJet is the plane that I'm taking from London to France, to Marseille. This morning, I'm looking at my phone, you know, EasyJet sends me a notification. You know, is everything, have you printed or checked in or whatever, which I did a few days ago. I checked in to that, because you can check in the US, you have to check in 24 hours ahead of time. I guess with this EasyJet, I could check in whenever. So I checked in, confirmed the bags, confirmed the seat, right? Today, so I did that, and I missed a very key point. I am not flying out of Heathrow Airport. London has 2 airports. I'm flying out of Gatwick Airport.
How far is that?
Nowhere freaking near each other. They're like an hour.
Oh my God.
So, and I didn't notice it when I
Yikes.
booked it. I didn't notice it when I confirmed it and checked in. I noticed it when they sent me an email this morning. So I had to
And you're
cancel.
flying tomorrow.
Yeah, I had to cancel. Now I'm not going to Gatwick until Monday of next week, right? Or Tuesday even of next week. But still, like, I'm not going to be looking at that stuff. I'm going to be free falling all over London. So like, for me to see that this morning, it's like, why was that the first thing I saw when I looked at my phone? Why was that? So in the 7th insight, we're taught to follow luminosity and trust. Like sometimes you feel like you're in a rabbit hole, or you're like squirrel, squirrel, right? But I am aware enough that even when I boomerang like that, right? Like squirrel, I make a mental note. I need to come back to this because that was very important, right? And so I was looking at something else. I opened my phone. I try not to look at I get on my yoga mat right away. I try not to look at my phone, but I looked at my phone. I'm lying in bed. The cats are bugging me to feed them, you know, and I'm like, why am I looking at this? Why is this? And all you have to do this, you know, this is the second insight, like first insight, slow down.
Slow down.
Slow down. I hear that a lot, like slow down. So I slowed down and I looked at it, and it was loud and clear, finally, Gatwick. And I know, luckily, like I know there are 2 airports. I've been a travel agent. I haven't ever had this experience where I fucked up and had to go to the other airport, because there are 2 airports in Dallas. There are 2 airports in Washington, D.C. I have had clients that go oh my God, my flight is out of Reagan, not out of Dulles in Washington, DC, right? So I'm aware of that. That's already like been imprinted upon me to check, is this the right airport? Like that's, like you said earlier, like you store things, and that's something that I have stored for a reason. And I have watched other people struggle with that experience of, oh crap, now what? You know, and I've had experiences with lack of accessibility with Craig where we've had to rebook an airline, or, I mean, gosh, we had a really very unfortunate day in Amsterdam because we couldn't get on a plane because it wasn't accessible and they wouldn't even let him on the plane. And that's not a thing in the United States. Like that's just not a thing, but in Holland, apparently it is. And, you know, we were like, there's a reason. Lose your cool, be nice to the people, you get more with sugar, right? Like be kind, right? So yeah, so anyway, today that was the first thing I did before we got on. I got up at
That's so critical. That's like the most
critical
critical step, considering that you have the travel agent background, and for you to miss that very critical piece of information is weird, but like
it's
what
weird.
happened this morning.
Yeah, no, it's weird. Like I'm focused on London, I'm not focused on Heathrow, right? So yeah, and the brain deletes things. So like I said, you can't take in all of this information. I can't take in that there are 3 paintings on the wall behind me and a snowboard and some boxes, and I can't take all that in. Like I'm just taking in you right now, or all of the things on the wall in front of me, right? The brain deletes things. That's why like you and I could look at this wall and I'll see one thing and you'll see another, and 10 minutes later when someone quizzes us what's on that wall, you won't remember what's on this wall because the brain deletes things. It has to. It can't take in all of the information. That's what causes us to have overwhelm. That's why people are, you know, scattered and forgetful and unfocused, because the brain is deleting the wrong things, right? So if you think of yourself as a cup that we keep pouring information into, and the information is spilling out because we can't store it all, right? Because we're not taught how to use that 90% of our brain. You could remember if you were taught, right? Jedis remember. Jedis take
mindfulness,
right? Like a CIA agent's going to take in the whole room and see the exit, right? And know, like we've watched enough spy movies, right? Like one person's not.
The brain can be trained,
right?
Exactly. But like for the normal person who doesn't usually train their brain in this manner, I think like 2 words would stick: slow down. Just don't go too fast. Just take it in and just take a deep breath. You can't do everything all at once. Like no one can. So there's really no point in rushing things. So
yeah,
that's like a good reminder.
I'm classic for not seeing all of the details, and I know why, and I accept why, because I move too fast. I have a very, you know, rapid fire brain intellect, and I'm like on to the next thing. But you know, in school I learned that was to my detriment, right? I wouldn't go over my work again. I know I said this to you, I need an editor. I'm going to write this whole paragraph and I'm going to spell 3 things wrong because I'm typing too fast, not because I don't know how to spell it. Right. So, yeah. So it's slow down.
Slow down. That's a very important thing for me to remember as well. Yes, is slow down. And that the brain is trainable.
And breathe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's still so much that we haven't covered, and there's still so much that we have to talk about. But I know that we went through childhood and going to Scotland and Spain and Amsterdam, and then we're back in the United States. So we did the full circle. But this was a very fun and interesting conversation, Andy. I was able to pick up so much information from you just from that talk, and I don't think we went over like an hour and 30 minutes. So like imagine all the information I can get just hearing more of your stories and your wild pocket stories along the way. So
yeah, and the things that you retain from this conversation, I'm sure you'll use, right? So anyone watching this, it's the same. It's like there are little things that you'll use, right, from my experiences. I have people like that in my life that went before me and taught me and you know, had stories that I like. I totally just thought of another story. I'll save it for another time, but I have a story around why it was okay for me to marry someone in a wheelchair, because someone had already opened my mind to that concept in Spain in that 2-week period in
wow.
Spain. Yeah.
Ooh, I would
He,
love to dive into that.
yeah, he dated someone in a wheelchair. I can tell you that. But I remember thinking I was so curious about that at the time. And this was, well, actually, it would have only been about a year before I would have met Craig. So we didn't start dating right away, but I would have met him about a year after that. So, you know, little things like you're moving to Spain.
Yeah,
And
listening to your stories, I can see so many similarities to how it was for you, and I'm mirroring it to what I'm about to experience. I'm not saying that I'm already predicting what's going to happen to me, but
no,
I just get a sense of
you
like,
can't predict.
yeah, of course, in this
Every
day and
time you
age.
plan, it's like the universe throws you a curveball, and it's like that curveball is actually meant
Oh,
to be there. It's meant to be there to teach you something,
yeah.
you know, which I just witnessed all last weekend with building our deck. It's like, oh my gosh, you cannot plan for any kind of,
Yeah.
you know, easy
No matter
outcome.
how detailed that plan is, it's
Right,
just gonna, something's just gonna break it. But
right.
I think like another interesting idea that we can talk about next time, if you're open to it, what really stuck to me is you saying that I fall in love quickly. I want to talk
Mhm.
about relationships and what it was like, what it is like now, like the dating scene back then and the scene now. I
Wow.
think
I don't know if
that's
okay. Well, we'll talk about that offline, and then we'll see if I can talk about that
we'll
on.
see. We will see.
I'm not sure that
It's so
that's
interesting.
all of those yeah, wild and free stories or something that I want to share with the greater public. But yeah, you and I can talk about them for sure.
Awesome. Get exclusive
I think
access.
I'm blushing. Anyway, thank you for watching, everybody. Thank you for listening. We so appreciate you. If you like what you hear, please go follow us at AndyKennedyCO.com. We do have a free 21-day affirmation course that when you sign up for our mailing list, you get for free. So right away, we're giving you content and affirmations to help retrain your brain and get out of the comfort zone and do brave things and know that it's okay and that you're protected no matter what you do. And affirmations for me are a great foundation for that. And then, as I mentioned last time, Mary is just about close to helping us launch our, and I give all the credit to her because she's the master magician in our office, our virtual office, because of course she's across the world, literally 12 hours ahead of me. So she's a time
Mhm.
traveler right now. She's coming back in time to 9:30 a.m.
From the
Whereas,
future.
yes, thank you for being here from the future. And I love that. And I'm going to the future tomorrow. So I'm super excited about that. You know, you leave in Thursday and you wake up and it's Friday. It's like, how does that happen? It's
You're
amazing.
gonna time travel.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's totally amazing. Totally messes with your mind and your body, but it's still amazing. So yes, and if you're listening on Mary's brand new Not So Good at Small Talk podcast, please continue to follow her there for lots of things around the topic of not small talk, which I love because I am not also good at small talk. Like
Thank you, Andy.
people freak out when they're with me and they're brand new to me because they're like, wait, why are we going so deep already? I just met you.
Same.
And I'm like, it's because I don't
Same.
care about your dog or your son or no, I
I
want to know.
cannot for the life of me. Nope.
Yeah, I do not for the life of me. I want to know why you came to this planet this time around.
Yes, that's the first question I expect when we meet.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.